Hello, I'm Tess Lewis, and I will be reading from my translation of Judith Keller's novel, Wild Maneuvers. Judith is a Swiss writer who writes in German. I translated her recent book, The Questionable Ones, which is a collection of microfictions. Judith has an exquisite sense of the absurd and a great comic eye, which I hope will come through in the excerpt that I'm reading. Wild Maneuvers is a crime novel in which it's not clear if a crime has actually been committed or if it has, to what end. So I'll read a bit from the interrogation from a detective with one of the one of the two women who are accused or suspected of committing this crime. Let's get back to the delivery van. The van was photographed times on the evening of July 30th. You see, first at 10:30 p.m. in the parking lot of the Guggenheim Garden Center in Windisch, about an hour later at Wiesenstraße 3 in Oberwindisch. What did you do in these two locations? What nice pictures, thank you. I had no idea we were being photographed. But to be honest, I'm not surprised. There are so many pictures being taken. There are pictures of everything. I almost forgot how good it looks, that Mercedes delivery van. I almost said our delivery van, but it wasn't ours at all. It would only accompany us for a short part of the way. Later, we lost sight of it much too early. But it's important to be able to let things go. Otherwise, you get too caught up with something and it turns out badly. It really does appear that the delivery van was parked for some time in, where did you say it was? In Unterwindisch? Fine. That night, we drove away from the Glatt Shopping Center parking lot. Ellie was looking out the open window. She was looking for cranes, but the night had swallowed them up. We drove past construction zones, excavators, and barriers. Then we got to a gas station. It had a large selection of white wines, salted nuts, and cinnamon chewing gum. We said to ourselves, it's always a question of balance. And if you yourself are calm enough, that reassures others. And that's how it was. A little later, we started driving again, drank white wine, and ate the salted nuts and gum. I let an SUV provoke me for a few hundred meters. Pelly drummed a rhythm on the roof with her fingers, and then we turned suddenly. We drove out of the city, past car dealers and long company buildings, past more construction zones through the surrounding villages. The night was tepid, the lights soft. Everything seemed to have been waiting for us. Pelly eyed the houses greedily. They have no idea, she said. As so often, I had to admit she was right. Even the decorative plants had no idea, or the lawn furniture, especially not the plaster statues, of which there were many that summer, probably more than ever before. How could it be that I never noticed them earlier? They stood innocently in the garden and outside the front doors. I slowed the van and stopped. Pelly opened the heavy van door and followed a narrow path into a garden. The warm night flooded in the open window. My hands were sweating. I watched Pelly as she went. She stood in front of a gray metal lawn chair with a yellow seat cushion. She seemed to be collecting herself. The grasses nodded or prayed. It was too dark to see which. A jolt went through Pelly's body. She lifted the garden chair over her head, and a giggle escaped her as she stood there briefly with the chair raised. Then she carried the chair to the delivery van, opened the back doors, shoved it inside, and slammed the door shut very loudly, it seemed to me, but nothing moved. A few kilometers on, we found a stone swan near a pond. Pelly Rouge bent down and picked it up gently, as if it might wake. In that moment, she reminded me of those pictures of Jesus holding a lost lamb in his arms. The lamb hadn't even noticed that it was lost, but as soon as it was in Jesus' arms, it knew it was in a better place. Not far from there, a mile south, a yawning plaster lion sat surrounded by lush reeds. It came too. No one objected, and so everything took its natural course. Apparently, no one filed any police reports. We took something from everyone. Of course, it's not the case that we liked everything we took. Quite the contrary, in fact. But this was a matter of our personal taste? The things were simply there, and you have to learn to live with things as they are. That's why we wanted more than two of each kind. Noah's done, Pelly said as she lugged the third lion into the van. You should know that Pelly is strong. I could see her flex her muscles before she grabbed things. Soon the two of us had a ritual. when she came hurrying up with something, I would press the gas pedal. She would start running and throw it in the van without stopping, slam the back door shut on the run, and at what seemed at the very last moment, she would swing herself onto the passenger seat next to me so that it looked like a robbery. I'd floor it with a doll. We hoped that someone would see us, but nothing moved. Were we disappointed? I'd say rather that we were struggling with expectations. Ellie said that big changes always happen without being noticed, while everyone else was concentrated on trifles. That's why we'd only be at the center when we became unimportant. And when I think about it, I have to admit she was right. It's true that back then, we wanted the police to chase us. We longed for sirens and speed. But if you want something especially badly, then that's precisely when you won't get it. And now, when the police are finally taking an interest in me, it doesn't matter to me so much. So I hope that you will keep an eye out for this very exciting, amusing romp of a book. It will be published by Seagull Books in 2024.